What's up, guys? Got another video for you. Quick topic, but an interesting one at that. It's whether or not the SuperDraft is a relevant way for teams to acquire players in today's MLS. There's a lot of discussion on whether or not the draft is outdated or it's not a viable option for teams to acquire decent players, or it's straight up not even worth their time to use picks like LA Galaxy. Bruce Arena didn't even show up to the first round because he didn't have any picks, but nonetheless, he still didn't even show up because he felt it wasn't worth his time. I still think there are enough good reasons why the draft should remain in the MLS system, especially the fact that the draft can still produce amazing players. Like last year, Kyle Larn was drafted number 1 overall, and he went on to be an amazing player in Orlando. And I think as long as these top picks are still valued by teams that did poor the season before, I think that's enough justification to keep the draft in place just on that merit alone. But in terms of depth, I don't think it's necessarily a huge factor whether or not there's huge MLS like draft classes coming through the ranks year by year. Like some people argue that as the drafts go on, they're just not as deep as they were in the past. There are always going to be like hidden gems, but I think it's still going to be a good way for teams to draft lower picks and then stash them in their USL affiliates or their MLS 2 teams. And this is on top of players coming through teams' academies, which is becoming an even more prominent system for teams to utilize. Like teams such as New York, I think the Red Bulls signed like 8 homegrown players to contracts this window so far, which is an absurd amount. Which it's really impressive though, nonetheless. But I don't see a reason why the draft should be taken away when it's just another tool that teams can utilize to get players, whether they're top of the round guaranteed starter players or bottom of the barrel talent. Like it's still a good tool to use regardless if teams want to use them or not. I just think it would be almost crazy to just take away a path to get and acquire players. Like, why would you want to rid yourself of an easy and effective way to acquire the rights of players? Although the draft is weird in the soccer world, like you don't have the draft in European countries and all that nonsense, but in America, I don't want to rant that, oh, it's the American thing to do to have a draft in the sport. But it is a good way to create fairness amongst all the teams and in the way they handle the draft. For example, when you get last season before, as you all know, you get the first pick next year, which is a good incentive and to promote to try to level the balance in terms of competitiveness. But I mean, one player most likely isn't going to be a world beater for you in the first season or make a huge impact like on how your record turns around the next season. But it could be a huge stepping stone for the club trying to turn their season around next year. And I do think the system is a lot better than like a free-for-all when players decide to go pro while they're in college or once they graduate and use up all their eligibility. I think it's a lot better to have a draft in place than to just have a free-for-all for signing players. It could create a large imbalance in where players want to go, and I think the draft does a good job at creating fairness in a weird system. And in closing, I just don't see the draft disappearing anytime soon. That would just be such a drastic change in the MLS, and it hasn't caused anything negative to take place. It's a great spectacle for MLS in general to have the draft every year and for athletes to come through the ranks of the draft. So I just don't see the downside of keeping it. So thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed my rant. Sorry if I rambled on a bit too long, but thanks again, and see you soon in the next episode.